On today's show, Laura Heywood interviews
Tony Award winner and badass rock and roller, Lena Hall. Welcome to Laura Heywood Interviews. I'm Laura Heywood. I'm tempted to skip past the intro because my guest today, Lena Hall, is one of those ubiquitous performers who literally needs no introduction. Seriously, what hasn't she done? Perhaps most recognizable for her Tony Award-winning run as Yitzak in Hedwig and the Angry Inch, a production that also won the Tony for Best Revival of a Musical. Lena made her Broadway debut at age 18 in Cats and has worked on stage virtually consistently since then with roles in 42nd Street, Dracula, Tarzan, Annie Get Your Gun, The Toxic Avenger, Rooms, Kinky Boots, Hedwig, and many more. She's taken a few breaks from the musical theater and non-musical theater to work on camera, running the gamut from competing on MTV's reality show Legally Blonde the Musical, The Search for Elle Woods, to voicing a My Little Pony named Countess Coloratura for the hit cartoon series, to roles in the Sex and the City film and HBO's Girls, to her celebrated starring role in Becks, an indie film where Lena got to show off her musician chops alongside a co-star you might have heard of named Mena Suvari. And her EP series, Obsessed, a collection of songs and videos celebrating a wide range of artists including Pink, Beck, Radiohead, Elton John, and Nirvana are not to be missed. Today, Lena's here to promote a new Obsessed project and her latest hard-rocking show here in New York. It's part concert, part musical, all spectacle. Jim Steinman's Bat Out of Hell is currently melting faces at New York City Center. Lena very generously agreed to spend an hour with me on her afternoon off, even though she's got to be in full voice at 8 p.m. tonight for a nearly 3-hour-long Skreltathon. And I could not be happier to see her. Please welcome Selena Consuela Gabriela Carvajal, a.k.a. Lena Hall.
Yay!
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 How are you feeling?
Great! Oh my God, so good.
So you're into, like, the opening nights happened, you're through previews. How is Bat Out of Hell feeling? Are you loving it as much as you loved performing these songs the first few times you did them?
Oh yeah, the show is just total fun to do. It requires very little prep for me. Like, I get to just go on stage and do what I love to do. And that, to me, just like, it's not called work. It's called play.
I feel like you would have signed on to do, like, a Jim Steinman cover band tour just because you love singing these songs so much. And the fact that it happens to be New York City Theater is a bonus.
Total bonus, yeah. I mean, you know, it's got a loose storyline. It's mostly just like this rock concert in your face. The sound is so good. The band is incredible. The performers are ridiculous. Like, everybody on that stage is 100%. So, and everyone gets, of course, my approval for, you know, vocal chops. Just tough to get. No, but like, listening to my co-stars sing is like super cool. And I get to share the stage with tried and true, you know, Broadway vet, Bradley Dean. He's been around forever, and he's got his resume is ridiculous.
I know. I remember seeing him go on for Raul Esparza and Company in like 2007. I think I saw that show 10 times. I like was in the rush line every day, and I remember the first time being like, oh man, I want to see Raul Esparza, and then being like, who is this guy?
Yeah. Bradley Dean, amazing. I get to share the stage with him. We'd never really done a show together, so we had done all these like workshops and readings.
So you knew him before?
I knew him before, but I played his daughter. So I was like, when they came to me with this offer, they were like, Bradley Dean is in it. He'd be playing your husband, and I was like, oh, well, that could be fun.
Well,
that could be kind of funny.
You were definitely. I mean, okay, so the idea of teenagehood is a very strong through line, as much as anything is a through line in Bat Out of Hell.
Right, yeah.
And I'm not even going to try to explain what the plot is. I mean, we may come around to it. I will say, though, that I had a great interview with Christina Bennington that you can find on Laura Heywood Interviews on Apple Podcasts, as well as on dnrstudios.com. And she and I talked a lot about the plot, because she's been with the show for so many years that she has a lot more sort of, even if it's stuff that she kind of just makes up in her head to fill in the gaps.
I mean, what's cool about it is that, like, it has this big following. Like, there are people who are come to the theater, they're dressed up, and this is brand new to me, but this show has been around long enough for people to be, you know, kind of, it's got this like cult following, and like there are people who came all the way from London to see the show, from Germany, from all over the world coming to see the show. and they fill in the plot lines and what like any kind of plot hole that maybe not explained on stage, which I actually kind of like because it can allow the audience to be like, oh, that happened, and like if they really want to go for it, they can kind of make up their idea of what happened in the show. Yeah,
it's like it's sort of fan fiction on the fly.
Yeah, exactly.
I know that one of the things that I learned in my research for my interview with Christina was that this is not really a jukebox musical the way that we traditionally think of them. Like, it wasn't a bunch of songs that after they became hits, somebody was like, let's put them on stage. Jim Steinman actually wrote them for the stage.
Yeah.
And he started working on the show in the 1960s.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, he had this idea of sort of a Peter Pan world. And Christina mentioned to me, she was like, when you watch Peter Pan, they never explain why Peter and the Lost Boys are young forever. You just, they tell you that they are and you accept it. So we do the same thing in our show. We just don't tell anybody really what it's about.
I mean, how often is like a zombie trope explained?
I know.
Then suddenly there's just zombies. Who knows how or why, or do we ever get really deep into the why of like a show that's about like a zombie apocalypse? No, not really. It's more about like kind of the character journeys and the discoveries.
And the songs.
Which, and for this show, it's about the songs.
Yeah.
All about the songs.
Well, if I had heard that, I should say when I heard that there was a mother and a father and a teenage daughter and her rebellious love interest, I was like, and that Lena Hall was in it, I was like, obviously Lena plays the daughter. Like, I still feel like you can play 18. So when you're playing the mother of an 18-year-old, I was like, what? But then Christina, in our interview, pointed out that the whole point of the flashback scene where you and Bradley Dean rip each other's clothes off on top of a convertible worth the ticket price alone, that is specifically a song written about teenagers. And so you were, or Sloane, your character was, in fact, a teen mom.
Correct.
Which is the
Pregnant,
only way it makes sense.
Instantly pregnant, first time
and so
she had sex.
Here's my theory. On the plot line is that so all we get from the limited exposition in the show is that there was something called the Chemical Wars that froze a bunch of people at age 18. Mm-hmm. We don't really know how or why or how those people were chosen or whether it happens to them or whether they choose it. Anyway, I have a theory. My fan fiction version is that you get frozen at 18 unless you have decided to grow up, and you can either decide that intellectually or you can decide it biologically by becoming a parent.
Ooh.
And so the reason that Sloane did not freeze along with her other like hard rock and rebellious cohorts is because she was with child. And so she had to grow up so that she could raise the next generation.
Interesting. I like your fan fiction quite a bit.
So where do I start? Okay, so when we first meet Sloane, she is martini swilling, sort of. She looks sort of like Peg Bundy with a big teased red hair wig, and she's married to kind of a Trumpian figure, like a all-powerful sort of dictator-ish man in a tower with his name on it.
Yeah.
But then we find out later that she actually used to wear a leather jacket and might in fact have more in common with for the freezers, these forever 18-year-olds, than we originally thought. And she proceeds to bond with her now 18-year-old daughter over it. I can imagine it was that secret history, that rock and roll side of Sloane that attracted you to the part.
Well, I mean, reading it on the page, I was like, oh, she comes in drunk with a martini in her hand. I was like, well, that's fun. Like on a couch. How fun, right? I can do stuff with that. Like when it's so clearly written, just kind of a wild character that is, has these really instantaneously strong adjectives attached to her. That to me was like, yeah, okay, I can have fun with this. Like if me and the director jive, and he trusts me and I trust him, then this will be a lot of fun to discover and find fun things. because it can go many ways. You can look at it on the page and be like, I'm going to do this very seriously, and take her journey, and from being a total like alcoholic wreck to finding herself and putting herself together again, you know. Or you can like kind of find the humor in what these two characters are. I feel like the mother and father are kind of the clown. They're the comedic relief of the entire show, and you need that relief to like kind of offset this like kind of serious tone of the rest of the, because it is a very large campy show.
Totally.
You know, does not take itself seriously, but when a lot of the other characters, when there's not a whole lot of, you know, humor written into what they do, you have to have the comedic shift in there somewhere, and I feel like that's what me and Bradley bring.
Yeah, and you know, it's not your first time playing a cartoon.
It is not at all, and it is so much fun too.
I bet.
I just kind of came into this total blank slate. Everyone else had done the show before, except for a few people, but I was like a blank slate coming into this show, and that's kind of fun because then you get a whole fresh take on the thing. I didn't look at any videos. I really didn't do much research. I didn't know really what was going. I didn't read the whole script. All I did was read my scenes, because sometimes you just kind of want to be in the dark when you come into a project, so you have a fresh take on everything going on, because that can really infuse something with something new, or different, or something that other people may not have thought of before. And honestly, like, I don't really know what's going on in the rest of the show.
But neither does Sloan.
And,
So
yeah.
Lena doesn't have to know, because Sloan
And I don't
doesn't know.
Well, exactly. Like, things can be a surprise, like things like that. So for me, I looked at the script. I was like, drunk, silly, ridiculous, kind of dryly humored woman, fun to play. And then I read the songs I was singing, and I was like, great.
Yeah.
On board. 100%. This will be fun. I haven't done a show in a really long time. I had been missing being a part of like a theater family, because it's
Hedwig
very
your,
different.
Oh, no, it wasn't. I was going to ask you
No,
if
I did
Hedwig's
the
your last show.
play.
I saw it.
Yeah, I did the play at Lincoln Center, which was totally all about polyamory, orgies, sex, and it was performed in front of 80-year-olds, which was great.
Some 80-year-olds and some, I was going to be like some young people like me, and then I was like,
Yeah, a few
I'm now
young
in my
people.
I'm now in my 40s, and if that's the young end of the audience, then
Yeah.
And by in my 40s, I mean barely 40.
Yeah, there were some like 90-year-olds. I mean, these are like you know, subscribers for Lincoln Center,
And you had a hot, sexy role in that show.
boy did I.
Did you ever?
And
Wait, remind me what that show is called. It had a long name.
How to Transcend a Happy Marriage.
That's right. Did Rebecca Teichman direct that?
Correct.
I love her.
I know, she's amazing. Sarah Rule wrote the book.
Ugh.
I mean, it was just one of those that was like awesome play, fun to do, wild ride for all of us. You know, we were all making out on stage every night. It was kind of like,
It was hot.
it was high. Yeah, it was crazy. You had oh my God, Marissa Tomei, like, describing an orgy and what it felt like to be in an orgy. Oh my God. And like then you had these 90-year-olds with their like, God love them, with their, you know, their
hearing
their
aids.
hearing aids going off. And you know, I love Lincoln Center. I feel like the show is a downtown show. Not
Like a New York Theater Workshop.
like a public theater show, you know? But, you know, people, my mom, like, loved it to death, loved the show. People really loved the show. A lot of people didn't understand it and were very put off by the graphic language. But I think all in all, it had a very interesting message that created a lot of dialogue as far as monogamy, polyamory, all that kind of stuff. But yeah,
I just
that
like
was
the
last
I liked
show
that
did.
you had the opportunity to show your dramatic chops.
Right.
Because especially when people have seen you, you know, I mean, I guess it was obviously before Bat Out of Hell, but if people know your rock and roll side, they might not necessarily think of you as somebody who could do a straight play.
Right.
Although, you know, to play Yitzak,
It was
you
a
know,
straight play on
it basically was. I mean, you had some gorgeous musical moments, but
mostly.
Well, and what differentiated you from I think having seen various other productions of that, I think sometimes that character just kind of stands in the background and waits to be called upon, and is almost like a member of the band.
Yeah.
And you played it so actively, even in your moments when you weren't in the spotlight, which I think is the way that I can't imagine it any other way now.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
It was so clearly not a one-person show, and I think sometimes Hedwig feels like a one-person show.
Yeah.
And obviously the Tony voters thought the same thing.
Thank you.
Because the Tony should go to somebody who does something with the role that nobody else could do. Not just that they did an exceptional job, because I think you don't get to Broadway if you're not doing an exceptional job. And I think that everybody who gets nominated probably is good enough to earn it. But the person who wins, I feel like, should be doing something with the part that astonishes.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're welcome. So what I'm saying is you can really act, and as we know from Bat Out of Hell, you can really sing.
Well, thank you. But I mean, that was also like a fun acting exercise. How do you make something that can be clunkily written? Do you know what I mean?
I'm not saying those words.
But how do you take something that is a little clunky with a lot of tonal shifts, and how do you make it work? Because there is no changing what's been written, right? So the exercise is really in what is the character that you have to play in order to make these tonal shifts like feel right and not like totally like what and that was super fun, and I found that continually finding the humor in her is what works best for that character, because later in the second act things for her become a lot more serious.
In the first act we know you as sort of the wife of this guy Falco and the mother of Raven, who seems like she's kind of part of the institution that's trying to keep the kids down.
Yes.
And then at the end of Act 1 we find out through the gift of her leather jacket.
Yeah.
But somehow it doesn't have any damage to it at all. And I'm like, if she was really wearing this as a teenager, that jacket would have some rips, some patches, some
she
scuffs.
took care of it.
Yeah, okay. She had it refurbished for
possession. Yes.
But so we learned she has history outside of Falco Tower.
Yeah, for sure. She goes on a big journey. It's like in my head, so again, it's like fan fiction. So in my head, my fan fiction of my character, this is just my character's journey, is that she got pregnant at an early age, decided to have the child, and kind of lost herself, lost her identity, who she was, through this child, because she's been raising a kid the whole time. So it's all been about that kid. It has not been about her relationship with this man that she may or may not have wanted to marry, right? They married because of the baby.
Yeah, and he had resources. He was
exactly.
a rich...
So he was able to take care of her. So she kind of has lost her way, lost herself and her child. And now her child is old enough to go off and do the same and make the same mistakes that she made. She's starting to lose the grip on her identity, which is her child at this point, right? So she's losing her grip on her now identity.
Very empty nester.
Yeah, now she has to figure out who she is again, and she has sunken into this kind of world of alcohol or substance abuse, just to kind of get through the day, make herself feel like she has something going on, right? And so her journey from this kind of lost person, she experiences some trauma. She has to make some decisions. She has to do it on her own because her child is off and making her own mistakes.
It takes place on Raven's 18th birthday, so she's like literally not a child anymore.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think it's very curious that several times you've used the word lost, because the gang of forever 18s, I almost said forever 21s, the Freezers, are called the Lost in a reference to, I think, the Lost Boys from Peter Pan.
Correct.
But I like the idea that who's really lost.
Right, exactly.
It is perhaps those who have shut themselves off from the outside world.
Yes, yeah. I agree. She had been totally sheltered from what she used to be. She's been denying herself who she is in order to raise this child in this situation, right, with a husband who hates those people that maybe she once was. And so then, you know, and then second act, she gets to go on a journey of recovery, but we don't really see any of that. You know, nobody really knows.
I mean, there is
the journey, but for me, you know, I got to make up the story. I got to find my way through it, and it is a discovery of like finding out who you are again, figuring out how to live life without substance in order to cope. You know, to be able to cope on your own without having any help from substance, right?
Yeah.
And rediscovering who you are before that happened, right? And that, I think, finding her strength as well. So, you know, that is her journey, fairly simple on paper.
Plus, she gets a hot girl-on-girl kiss.
She gets a girl-on-girl kiss, which confuses everything, and then she, she gets to sculpt your face off. Like, why not?
I think that is my favorite thing about you, is that you are always ready to be like, that sounds fun, why the hell not? Instead of, well, I don't know how, I cannot imagine you being like, that doesn't fit with my brand. You know, I think that you're kind of like, fuck the brand. I'm going to do whatever I want.
I'll make it the brand.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
But because I do a lot of social media consulting, and I've really been grappling with my own quote unquote brand as Broadway girl, because that happened to be what I named my social media.
Oh my God,
feed.
right. And now you're
but you, as you know, as somebody who came from like the opera and ballet worlds and is now like literally squelching your voice off in the rockiest of all rock projects, you know, people like to put other people into boxes.
Yes, they need to.
And branding in the age of social media is actually important to, like, I wouldn't have the following that I have if I had just called myself Laura Heywood from the beginning. I had to give myself a separate, very recognizable, like, set expectations and meet them. I'm going to talk about Broadway, and all I talked about was Broadway. And now I'm like, but what about my sports talk radio background? And, you know, and what about the fact that I'm really into neurology and evolutionary biology? And, you know, I'm now reading Anna Karenina for the first time, and I kind of want to talk about that. You know, and people are like, what would Broadway girl be doing talking about classic literature if hasn't been made into a play?
Right.
I now when I teach these social media workshops, especially to young artists who are like, how do I brand myself so I can get cast in stuff?
Oh my God, someone just asked me that question last night.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's very important to discuss the difference between brand and identity, because brand is how you're trying to sell yourself, and identity is who you are in real life.
Yeah.
And I have a slide in my
IRL.
Hey. Except that I feel like IRL, like the word authentic, has been totally co-opted and doesn't even mean what it actually means anymore.
Right, yeah.
I think, like, I have a slide in my the PowerPoint presentation that I use when I go teach at colleges and to performing arts groups, that has a picture of Andrew Rannells and Josh Gad from Book of Mormon. And I feel like I'm always like, you know, if you saw these two guys and you didn't know who they were, and I asked you which one is going to be a star, you would say Andrew Rannells because he looks like a Ken doll.
Right.
And if Josh Gad had grown up trying to style himself as a Ken doll to be like, I'm going to try to make myself into a handsome leading man because that's the only way you can be a star, then he would have just been sort of a watered down, half-assed, not believable, Ken doll type.
Right.
Whereas instead, he leaned into his schlubbiness and ended up with one of the most recognizable, iconic roles in the history of Broadway, and has gone on to be a huge star.
Right.
Because I feel like he did such a good job of leaning into his identity instead of trying to brand himself as something he thought would sell.
Right. Yeah.
And I think part of that is saying, like, the only way to define me is, does it feel good to me?
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. Someone asked me, they were like, where do I start to work on find my brand? And I was like, well, first off, you have to figure out what it is you love. Like, what brings you joy? What do you love to do? What makes you happy to think about doing? Where would you see yourself doing that specific thing that you love? So it's not really about, like, for me, I love singing rock and roll. We all know that. That is very, very clear. I can sing anything, like literally any style I can sing. But what brings me the most joy is when I get to, like, really squelch my face off and sing my rock and roll and just be, you know, Lena fucking Hall, right? And that is like, I've leaned into this kind of rock persona that has kind of shifted in this interesting way and turned into kind of like the cool I'm not cool, but like the kind of cool girl, like,
yeah, you ride motorcycles and you dye your hair black and, you know, like,
right. If you've seen the movie that I did, Becks, it was like kind of the hipster lost, like the cool girl, but is totally not on the surface, doesn't know what, you know, she wants, and is like trying to figure out her life without relationship.
I love that movie so much. Like, seriously, if there's one takeaway, I mean, I guess there are 3 takeaways from the interview. Like, the most obvious one is go see Bat Out of Hell. And in a minute, we're going to talk about your next obsessed project, which I'm obsessed with, even though I just heard about it. But like, if there's one takeaway from me that's not about sort of pushing a current project, it's find the movie Becks and watch it, because Lena you're so fantastic in that role. And I felt like by the time when that movie came out, I'd known you for years. I'd interviewed you twice before it came out. And I was like, I felt like I got to know you as a performer in a completely new way. I had new insight into who you were as a person and as a performer. And I was so glad that the filmmakers gave the leading role to a quote unquote unknown. Like, you're not that you're unknown, but like, you're not a movie star.
Correct. Yeah.
Mena Suvari was the second, a supporting role, and you were the lead.
Yeah.
And I just
great cast though, because Christine Lottie played my mom. She's great.
Yeah. And and they could have been like, we need a name. And instead they were like...
instead they went for it, and they found someone who was kind of like exactly what they wanted. And what was interesting about that was that's the closest I've ever come to being myself in a film. And like that was the hardest thing I've ever done, because I'm so used to playing caricatures, you know, like wild characters, like what I do in Bat Out of Hell and like things like that. But this one, they were just like, let's be you and
take the makeup off.
Just no makeup. No makeup. My hair, that's, what it looked like when I woke up in the morning, like just kind of that wavy hair, whatever. And it was more of a stripped down, very personal kind of performance. While the story of the story of Becks is not my story. Certainly what you see on film is closer to who I am. Maybe not the schlubbiness, but
actually, you know what that reminds me of is I wouldn't describe it as schlubbiness, although I know what you mean. I think it's more of just sort of like a casual take on life.
But I also casual.
Everybody needs to Google. I think it was at the New York Times that did a piece on your apartment.
Yes,
I've never been to your apartment, but seeing those pictures, I was like, who lives like this? This is the most gorgeous. Like, she definitely got some super A-list designer to set this up. I know.
I did it all myself.
Like with quilts that your parents like gave you when you moved out. And...
so this apartment that was featured on the New York Times, it's no longer my apartment. Like, I'm gone from there. But this was my like recovery place. Like, I had just been through 2 horrible relationships, and I was like, I had just gotten sober. Like, and I was trying to piece myself together again.
So literal recovery.
I
didn't know that you were in recovery.
So it's not.
Oh, I do think I.
Yeah, it's not as deep as like a lot of people think. For me, I was like really kind of lost, and I was really depressed, and I was trying to figure out what I was doing with my life and why I was repeating the same horrible relationship like issue. Like, why do I hate myself so much that I'm going to be in these terrible relationships, right? So I decided that I would cut all alcohol and substances out of my life, get sober, and
Did you stop drinking coffee at one point?
I don't drink coffee. I drink iced tea. Yes, I tried to stop drinking iced tea. It was very, like, that's 2-week headache.
Because I remember running into you one time, like, randomly in Central Park, and people, I think it was during Hedwig, and people were giving you, like, Dunkin' Donuts gift cards.
Yes,
and you were like,
oh my God, yes. I was like, I can't do this anymore.
I'm not drinking coffee. I'm not putting donuts in my body. Everybody's so nice, but what in the world am I going to do with all these Dunkin' Donuts gift
so many,
cards?
yeah.
Had you mentioned it in an interview?
I did, yes. Note to self.
Be careful what you accidentally
what you say
promote.
you love, right? Yeah.
Do you know? Actually, I think you'll appreciate this story. One of my first full-time on-air radio gig in San Francisco. I was like a sidekick on the sports talk show, but then they hired me to host the midday show on 107.7 The Bone, classic rock that rocks in San Francisco, which is the heritage station KSAN. And I was 24, and like I always teased my boss that I was going to go on the air and be like, "Here's another song that came out before I was born." But it was like a lot of Jim Steinman.
Right, yeah.
It was
really?
Yeah, it was like
God.
motorcycle rock.
Yeah. Oh.
And here I was, this
How
like
fun.
I was really into adult contemporary, and I listened to like Sarah McLachlan and stuff. But they
Josh Groban.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it was like early 2000s. I don't know that I knew Josh Groban at the time, but I was into like, I don't know.
Yes.
People who played acoustic guitar and
singer-songwriters.
yeah. Anyway, but I had gone to school for theater, and I knew how to. I like bought myself a couple of leather cuffs that I would put on, and I'd put black eyeliner on, even though it was radio, and be like, I'm getting into character. And I wrote a bio for the radio station website that to make myself sound rock and roll, I said that I collected vintage rock T-shirts. I didn't, but people started sending them to me, and I funded my move to New York
by selling those.
By selling
all
of the vintage
God.
rock T-shirts that people sent me because, first of all, I was the only woman on the air.
Mm-hmm.
I was very young. I was like 23 or 24. And there were all of these sort of like 50 and 60-year-old motorcycle guys
dudes,
who wanted to impress me. And so that was the one piece of information they had about me. And so they just like write me a fan letter and send me their rock shirt from the, like the Deep Purple tour in 1984 or whatever. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I love vintage rock T-shirts. You can send them to the Bad Out of Hell stage door.
Is that what you would want? Like if people started sending you something, is vintage rock T-shirts? Is that your thing?
No, I don't know. So I went, so the whole like recovery thing,
Mm-hmm.
I also did the Marie Kondo, which is
mm-hmm.
what's called, KonMari or whatever, the life-changing magic of tidying up. Boy, did it ever change it really did do major life change.
What kinds of stuff were you getting rid of? Like stuff like that just collections?
Just like things that were just taking up space. Like I used to keep all of my scripts from everything I ever did, which was so much. All the readings and workshops and like all the scripts. It was like a whole, wall of scripts. And so I was like, why do I need these? I don't care. I don't look at them. So I got rid of all of that, and I got rid of like 70% of my clothing because I was holding on to things that I never wore. There were things that I had like that were given to me that I would look at, and I was like, ew. Like, you know what I mean?
Or like
had bad
gesture,
memories.
Or maybe the gesture meant something, but the thing
I felt
didn't
like
mean
I
anything.
couldn't get rid of things that people gave me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even if it was from someone who I was like, and it gave me a bad feeling.
Oh, uh-huh.
And then also photographs are a really interesting thing. We hold on to all these photographs, even if they're bad pictures that we hate of ourselves, right? It's like, no, just keep the one that you like. That's all you need to spark the memory, right?
Yeah, or you look through pictures and you're like, I don't have any memory of who these people even are.
Right, yeah, we hold on to things. It's bizarre what we hold on to. Anyway, so I got rid of 70% of my belongings. Long story short, and then moved into this place. And I decided, I was like, I need a sanctuary. I had just gotten off tour with Josh Groban, and we had stayed in my favorite hotel, and I can't remember the name of the hotel, but I loved the decor in the hotel. It was like extremely calming, and I was like, I think I need that. And so I moved myself to a place where I would run into a lot of people, where I felt like I had a network, because I was feeling really lonely. And so I moved to Midtown, right next to Kinky Boots Theater. And then
I I used to run into you there a lot, like just because, Broadway's like a college campus where it's a geographic center. Everyone's going to and from the same few buildings, and you end up on your circuit. So you keep running into the same people. That's probably my favorite thing about Broadway is that it's, if you're in Hollywood, it's not like you're just going to run into
people.
Yeah.
This way, you run into all your friends that you've worked with, coworkers, and you see people on the street all the time, which was something I needed at the time.
Yeah, I bet.
And then I was like, I need a sanctuary. So I took the inspiration from this hotel room, and I, like, put in wall-to-wall carpeting that was, like, white.
Did you have to have it cleaned all the time? I feel
So, like, this, like, beautiful, like, it was, like, a silver color, but it was, like, this light gray. And, like, I didn't paint the walls or anything, but I hung all my artwork. I designed the place, and I didn't have that much stuff. So everything could look really neat and clean all the time. Like, I was living in, like, a magazine, which is what I wanted.
And it literally ended up being in a magazine.
And it literally ended up, and it, and I had custom floor to ceiling curtains made, and the effect was really important. Our space that we live in, that we come home to every single night, it really affects the way we are in the world. So
I'm so jealous.
So you can take any space and make it beautiful. It's just you have to, take the time to really put everything away and to like love on your space so that you have a sanctuary to go to every night.
I would definitely I'm like on the edge of being a hoarder. I don't hoard anything gross, but I have, have you ever watched that show? Sometimes you get the people who are like, I
trash
collect
hoarders.
like that grosses me out so much. But
I hoard my dirty diapers because my toilet doesn't work anymore. You're
what is that? That I can't identify with at all, and it makes me want to start gagging.
You're a collector, is what you are.
I'm a collector, but I live in a 500 square foot apartment, and not only do I live in a 500 square foot apartment, but I own my apartment, which means I'm never going to move, which means that I don't have that like packing up everything and considering, do I need this moment?
Laura Heywood.
But listen, here's the thing.
What do you collect?
Broadway stuff.
Well, this is why you're Broadway girl. So we need to come in and we need to make your apartment work for you.
Who do you mean by we?
Me.
Really?
Yeah.
Because here's why I collect the stuff. There's one thing that I love more than collecting the stuff, and that is finding its true home, which is never with me. There are a few things that are with me. Like I will always keep my original cast sign, Spring Awakening window card, because I collected those signatures myself. It's the show that changed my life.
Yeah.
It's framed, and it's like a piece of art in my home, right?
Nice.
But also people contact me all the time and are like, I'm getting rid of 20 years worth of playbills. Should I recycle them and I'm like, no, let me rescue them. They're going to end up probably at the Broadway flea market.
That's great.
But some of them are worth like $50 a piece on, these Facebook groups. It's like, did you know that if you have a color copy of the Anastasia, not color copy, but like a color Anastasia playbill, kids on Facebook and eBay will spend $50 or $75 on it because they went to black and white really early, or like original cast Newsies playbills, or the shows that didn't last but have fandom that came a little bit after, like Next to Normal, to me feels like it wasn't that long ago. Yeah. But if somebody's 20 now, they were 10 when Next to Normal came out, and they missed that moment, so they want a piece of it.
Yeah.
So I always feel like I know some of those playbills to keep. Like if you can find a Bonnie and Clyde playbill.
Oh, forget about it.
I mean, and so I feel like what if somebody, the one they've been looking for forever is like the Lena Hall Cats playbill. And that's in somebody's collection that's going to end up, I don't know.
I see what you're saying.
I feel like I'm sort of like a dealer.
Right.
Who doesn't have the time to actually like make the store.
Okay, so that's the problem.
Right.
Is that you have to.
I'm eager to get rid of the stuff. I just don't want it to go.
The time.
Right.
So that's
and
all
the
you
resources.
need. You need to dedicate some time to it. But also you also need a better system, clearly, in your house.
It's all in trunks. It looks nice. It sort of looks like I'm getting ready to move all the time because there's just piles of trunks and boxes.
Yeah, but that's not fun.
I know.
That's not fun. You want it to be easily accessible so you can like see what you have. It needs to be like by by show name, alphabetical, what you have. Once you have it out and like organized and alphabetical, I guarantee it will be so much easier to put it online and sell them.
Will
and
you
then you
please
can
come
actually
over?
become like this like the first thing you have to do is you have to organize the stuff that you want to sell or that you have.
I've
right?
started doing it. I want to be like the Triton Gallery of playbills.
Amazing. And you can do that. You just need the proper
Infrastructure.
Infrastructure. And all that is, IKEA. Let's talk about IKEA for a second. They have the best shelving systems. You could do a shelving system with like a Dewey Decimal system, like a library system, and you get those little things that cover each playbill. You just take some pictures of it and then you post it online, and then you have it all out, and then when you sell one, you all have a pile of things. It's easy. Like when I was selling my t-shirts for like a brief period of time,
When you were Marie Kondoing?
Or I made Lena fucking Hall t-shirts,
yeah.
right?
Which
do
these exist anymore? Because I want one.
No, they don't exist anymore, although I will be selling merch again.
Oh, good.
But that won't be until my TV show comes out. Snowpiercer, by the way, which is going to be airing on TBS. And yes, I sing on the show.
Is Daveed Diggs in that?
Correct.
Yes.
Love him.
Say no more. Lena Hall and Daveed Diggs.
Anyway, so when I was selling my T-shirts, I had envelopes. I had this thing that prints out postage and a weight thing. So I could weigh it, a scale, print a posted printer. That way I never had to go. I could just drop it off in the mail. Boom, done. So if you have everything that you need, then it becomes easier. But it becomes really daunting if you don't have it all organized first. So
all right. So Bad Out of Hall runs through September 8th. On September 9th, you're coming over.
I'm coming over to make your space
and we're going
a
to IKEA
sanctuary
again.
Because you own it.
I know.
You can't put wall-to-wall carpeting.
3 days ago was the 10-year anniversary of buying my apartment in New York City.
Oh my God.
And I'm like,
what area is it?
It's in Chelsea. I know. Has a view of the river.
Girl, we got to talk.
I know.
I am so into interior design. I just bought a house in Connecticut.
Shut up.
Yeah, my man and I.
Yeah, you see that ring on your finger.
There will be new updates about that. Anyway, so my man and I. Good updates, great updates. My man
Did you
and
say
I
new?
bought
There will be new updates or no updates?
New.
Oh, I thought you were like, don't talk about it. And I thought I messed up.
No, there'll be some updates
Okay.
coming soon. Anyway, so we bought a house up in Connecticut. We weren't looking for a huge space, but we got an amazing deal on a property. And it's just so big. I don't even know where to start, but it's like my little interior design fantasy, right?
I am like the anti-interior design. When I bought my apartment, I put a word out. I put a Facebook status that was like, I have a blank canvas. Does anyone know one of those reality shows that will just come in and like do your apartment for you?
First thing you're going to do, you're going to start a Pinterest page, stuff that you like, style that you like. We're going to do your apartment. It's going to be great.
Okay.
And you're going to have a whole work session to be like the playbill, like library of Congress.
All right, so listen, we
yeah.
still have some time left. We have about 15 minutes left.
Great.
There are two things we must talk about. The
Correct.
first is a special bonus for anyone who's listening within the first week. So here's the deal with Laura Heywood interviews. I sit down live. You can listen to the interviews live as they happen, Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 1. If you become a patron at dnrstudios.com/Laura. It's $6.95 a month. I know that sounds like, that's not nothing. It's still less than half of what you're paying for Netflix, so come on. Plus, it ends up being like, 8 interviews a month. So you get 8 hours of content from me, plus you get all the other shows at DNR Studios come with it, which is like Derek and Romaine and Anxiety and Naughty But Nice with Rob. And there's so much good content here. Make It Plain with Mark Thompson, which is a fantastic new progressive politics show in the mornings. Anyway, but you also get to find out about stuff that's coming up in the immediate future for my guests. Because those of you listening on the free podcast version, I love you just as much, but you don't get the episodes till a week later, so you might miss out on some stuff, such as this special event that Lena has coming up.
I'm going to be doing a show at Rockwood Music Hall this Monday, August 19th, 7 p.m.
Which is last Monday if you're listening on the free podcast. Wah, wah.
Wants. And I will be singing all Jim Steinman music with special guest Christina Bennington.
My friend, former Laura Heywood interviews guest. What
Correct.
time is this show?
7 p.m. And special guest Danielle Steers.
I was like, Danielle Steele?
Yeah, no. Sorry,
Can you imagine?
me. Danielle Steers. She's also in the show. She sings her face off. She kind of sounds like Cher.
Is she the other import from the UK?
Correct.
Yeah.
She's so good. So they're going to be joining me, as well as Joey Taranto, who I did Kinky Boots with.
I know
who
Joey.
is a squelter as well. So we are 4 squelters. We will be squelting our face off for you.
What's the difference between squelting and squelting? Because I always...
I think it's both the same.
Got it.
Squelting. I don't know. I'm not with it, apparently. And then...
yes, you are.
Then...
Rockwood Music Hall, 196 Allen Street in New York. How can
Correct.
people get tickets?
You can go to Eventbrite to get tickets, or you can get tickets the day of at the door. But don't be surprised if you're turned away, because it's going to sell out.
And you can, I'm sure all of this information is going to be or is already at Lena Rocker Hall on Twitter and Instagram, right?
Yes.
So that's really all people need to remember.
Just go to my Instagram, go to my bio. The tickets link is in my bio. But it is just, these are, my Obsessed series is all about stripping down songs to their kind of basic parts. So you can really hear lyrics and hear chord progression well. So you can hear more how they were written. And so it's going to be piano and drums, simple, fun.
Wait a second. These are going to be Jim Steinman songs, and Jim is known for like hard rock, like guitar licks. That was my imitation of a guitar lick. Like
That's a
super.
good guitar lick.
Thank you. Super. Like I feel like it's the music equivalent of pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what these songs are going to sound like stripped down.
Great.
But I can't wait.
Amazing. They're really well written.
Will Bradley Dean be there in his sparkly pink tight underwear that really leave nothing to the imagination, I might add?
No.
Speaking of strip down, you can see that at City Center.
Yeah, I think that I don't know if he's going to come or not, but come to the show or not. But I think that the shows hold up really well because they were written on piano.
Oh, the songs?
Yeah, I usually do guitar, like acoustic guitar versions of songs, but this time I decided to go with an amazing pianist, Brian Nash, is going to be joining me, because I feel like they were all written on the piano, and I'm going to do Nirvana Unplugged.
Of course,
right? Of course, who doesn't know
Everybody
Nirvana?
knows Nirvana
Yeah,
Unplugged.
right. Well, I'm going to do like a version of one of Jim Steinman's songs and do it like a la a Nirvana Unplugged.
Are you recording this or filming it?
I usually try to live stream my shows, but unfortunately the internet in that room is really bad, so it goes in and out. Sometimes you only get the first song.
Are there any
So you
rules
have to go
about
live.
like iPhone cameras? Because I may have
No,
to
not at
put
all.
that shit on YouTube.
No, not at all. Not at all. Come play. I mean, it is really off the cuff. These shows are always like super off the cuff. We rehearse once. It's just like more. It's more to have fun. It's not about it's not about overdoing any of the presentation. It is about having fun, being off the cuff, kind of flying by the seat of the pants, seeing what comes out creatively. So that's also another thing that I really like to do. So I'm doing like this acoustic guitar version of a truly heavy metal song.
I can't
and
wait.
I'm like learning the chords on my own by listening to the recording, right? And it's fun because I'm sure some of the chords are not right, but it becomes my own version, and then I make it my own. And it's not a song that anyone's gonna really know unless you're a huge Steinman fan or you're a fan of Bad Out of Hell, because it's one of the songs that was cut.
Oh, fascinating.
Originally from
Well,
the show.
I love the idea of seeing something that's sort of a work in progress, especially
Fun,
from
yeah, off
someone
the
that
cuff.
I have seen perform so many times in heavily rehearsed, like very
Yes.
specific, directed, choreographed moments. And this time we get to see you play. And I don't mean play instruments. I mean play like a kid plays. Where you're,
exactly.
Where you're teaching yourself how the world works through experimentation.
Yeah.
So I'm
It's fun.
buying a ticket right now.
Oh,
Like,
nice.
I will be there. So if anybody wants to hang out with me, they can hang out with me at Rockwood Music Hall on August 19th for the Lena Hall Jim Steinman Obsessed show.
Yeah.
And speaking of obsessed, one of my obsessions is making sure that I never take my public platform for granted. I think there's no excuse for being a public figure of any kind if you're not using your influence to make the world a better place. In fact, when
True.
people say to me, like, I want to be an influencer, I say, what kind of influence do you want to have on the world? And they say,
I want fashion.
They want to say, I want to get paid to take pictures of stuff on my Instagram. And I say, that is not influence. The influence that I want to have in the world is that I want to spread joy through contagious enthusiasm and leave the world a better place than I found it. And so I invite every one of my guests to have a few minutes to talk about a charity that's important to them. And so, Lena, what charity do you want to talk about today?
We're going to talk about the Bowery Mission, which is a great charity. It's been around for, over a century.
Whoa.
Yeah, and it's an organization. Basically, they feed the homeless every single day, 2 meals a day, which is a lot already.
I think a lot of people may or may not know the Bowery is a district in New York City that has a history of being sort of down and out neighborhood. It's become in the last decade or so pretty hip, but if you Google like images from the 1980s and before, maybe even the 90s of the Bowery, it was like the neighborhood in New York you do not go to. And it was riddled with homelessness and drug abuse. And so the Bowery Mission, especially, I'm looking at their website right now, founded in 1879.
Yeah. It's a great organization because not only does it provide meals, but it also provides shelter, and then they distribute clothing and all kinds of stuff for homeless people in need. But not only that, they have a really, really good program that puts people back on their feet who wanna go back on their feet. Because I've talked to but I've talked to a few homeless people, and what's interesting is some people choose that lifestyle. It is not all actually bad, amazingly enough. Some people want to be homeless. They take advantage of these programs because they helps them lead the lifestyle that they want to lead. For those who are struggling to get back on their feet and who want to come back as to society, like as society members who are giving society members, they have these programs that rehabilitate people slowly but surely and get them back on their feet and doing things that are good with the community and coming back into society as very useful, valuable people. So
you know what it seems to me
great.
is like they have certain situations in which they give a man a fish, and it sounds like they have certain situations where they teach a man to fish.
Correct. Yes.
And I use the word man in
the general term,
as a
in
non-gender specific, and as a specific reference to the, I don't know if you call it a proverb or whatever, but if you give a man a fish, he can eat for a day. If you teach a man to fish, you can feed him for a lifetime.
Correct. Yeah.
So
whatever people need and want from the program, they can do. They really, like when the rehabilitation program, they prove themselves. They gain the skills. They gain self-confidence, which is something that a lot of people lose when they deal with big hard changes in their lives that maybe takes their home away, or when they're kind of begging on the streets or something. It does a lot for self-esteem. And they rebuild a person. They rebuild their self-esteem. They teach them the value that they have. They teach them new skills. They really they do a lot for these people. It is a Christian organization, so I know that sometimes will rub people the wrong way, but like all in all, I think that it has a really good message and they do really good work.
Well, I mean, it sounds very much like, on a really literal level, this is the kind of work that Jesus Christ, the historical guy,
Correct.
would do. Like,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
even
yeah.
talking about God
It's
or
not- yeah.
resurrection or anything. And also, I think that, to be partially funded by or supported by a church is very different than only serving people of a certain religion. And I'm like 99.99% sure, looking at their website, that they're not turning anybody away.
No, they
so
don't
it's
turn
not
anyone
like
away.
they are discriminating, or being choosy on the they are just being
Correct.
inspired by the works of this historical guy who believed in taking in people who needed help.
Yep.
Bowery.org is the website for the Bowery Mission, and according to their website, they serve over 650,000 meals a year. They provide over 167,000 nights of shelter a year, so do the math on that one. And they donate almost 50,000 articles of clothing to people who need them in every year. And they've been, if those are averages over the last 130 years, then they're doing pretty good work.
Yeah.
And in fact, here is a statement that they have a wide open door. Quote, "Our programs are flexible and available to all, no questions asked."
Yeah. I love that.
Lena, I'm going to make a donation today to Bowery.org in your honor.
Aw, thank you.
I'm going to encourage my listeners to do the same thing, because I believe very strongly that a lot of little drops can add up to make a big splash.
True.
And this is also the kind of place that I may want to go do some volunteer work.
Yes, volunteer. It
Actually
is-
be there in person.
It is
Writing a check is one
wonderful.
thing, but to like go serve food and talk to the people and interact with them.
I've served food for them a couple of times, and it is wonderful, because you do actually get to talk to the people that are in line and like
Remind yourself that they're just as human as you are.
Well, I mean, what's great is when you do that, they tell you, they're like, look them in the eye, tell them, hello, how are you, sir? Like they like that, having interaction with these people who are ignored on the street, it helps them with their self-esteem. It makes them feel valued. It makes them feel better, which is good, which is very important. It's part of like the healing process, is to kind of humanize something that maybe people kind of look at in disgust on just like a daily commute. If you're able to just like treat this person as like what they are, a person, a human, it does a lot.
Okay, so Lena Hall, we're going to come to your show at Rockwood Music Hall on the 19th. We're going to
Yes.
go see Bat Out of Hell between now and September 8th. We're going to all find Becks on whatever streaming service and watch that. You are going to come over to my house. We are going to Marie Kondo my Broadway collection and my closet. We're going to take the clothes down to the Bowery Mission.
Yes!
Serve some meals, and then, I don't know, have an ice cream soda or something.
This sounds perfect.
Thank you for being here, Lena Hall.
Thanks for having me.